after on Tuesday, we actually covered a fair amount of ground in the sense that we were going over stuff with Golden Day. We were talking about setup with the college and having the asylum close by and all those sorts of things. I jotted down a couple notes of things that I still wanted to go over with you folks. Was talking about the statue, talking about True Blood's dream a little bit, and then getting some things about when he gets into New York City from Chapter 8, Chapter 9. So, statue, dream, New York City. Any other elements, though, that you folks wanted to make sure we touched upon before moving into those, where you walked out on Tuesday, or something that we never got into, but whether confused or just not quite addressed?
His grandfather, what's the deal with that?
He was a secret agent.
He was a secret agent. I think he was just like Dr. Bledsoe, though. Where he sucks up to the white people. So
Well, one of the, and I think we kind of mentioned it in passing, but didn't get into the specifics. When we were talking about the vet doctor, and I realized vet doctor's not his grandfather. There we go.
Gotta wait for it to warm up.
Yeah. It's had a whole 48 hours off, so things are a little bit rough. Paraphrasing, vet doctor's advice to Tim.
Do your own thing.
Okay.
And
Be
don't
yourself.
Dr.
You're your own
Bledsoe.
father.
Don't be Dr. Bledsoe.
Don't. And one of the things he mentions is play the game, but don't believe in it.
What does that have to do with
What would you mean by play the game?
I took like him saying that to mean like you have to act as though you are subservient to the white man, but like don't believe that you are.
Okay.
Yeah, like you can't do anything about it.
Just listen to what they say.
Like just do what they
But
say,
no,
but like
you don't
know that like this is not.
I think Dr. Bledsoe will also subscribe to that.
Fran?
I thought that the advice meant like don't do anything too radical because then they'll catch you. But if you're gonna do something, like kind of do it under the radar.
Okay. So kind of fly under the radar. So far as like with dealing with being that whole submissive and knowing that you're not necessarily that way, but don't go and try to tip over the apple cart and cause a greater mess than anything else.
Like you'll get away with more if you're not radical.
And you could argue that, if you take a look at the prologue, which again is like 20 years later, he's literally flying under the radar. He's under the road, and he is in some ways kind of doing his non-radical, but I'm going to steal that power, that electricity, kind of do it in my own sort of way. The grandfather has similar advice to him, where he mentions, and grandfather is a recurring image motif that always kind of tends to pop up throughout the course of the book. Grandfather's laughing at him when he's opening up the envelopes in the dream, like after the whole scholarship episode has, where Keep the Boy Running. The grandfather on, I believe it's page, let's say 16, when on his deathbed, he called my father to him and said, "Son," and so this is not a dream, but this is him remembering. "Son, after I'm gone, I want you to keep up the good fight. I never told you, but our life is a war, and I have been a traitor all my born days, a spy in the enemy's country ever since I gave up my gun back in the Reconstruction. Live with your head in the lion's mouth. I want you to overcome him with yeses, undermine him with grins, agree him to death and destruction, and let him swallow you till they vomit or bust wide open." They thought the old man had gone out of his mind, but he had been the meekest of men. The younger children were rushed from the room, the shades drawn, the flame of the lamp turned so low that it sputtered on the wick like the old man's breathing. "Learn it to the youngins," he whispered fiercely. Then he died. Play the game in the sense that act your role, overcome him with yeses, undermine him with grins. So grandfather, I would say that he would have similar, about the right grandmother. Grandfather has similar advice. Bledsoe, while not the same person as the grandfather, what's he kind of doing? He's acting the role with the white philanthropist, with the white trustees, but he's really trying to gain his own power by flying under the radar. Bledsoe does it. Who's another character that in some way does this?
True Blood.
Maybe not necessarily realizing that he's doing it, but True Blood is doing it. What's he doing? He's acting the role. He's being submissive. He's living the stereotype. He's upholding the stereotype, but he ends up getting money out of the deal and whatnot. And as we kind of said, Tim ends up doing this eventually within the prologue. So the grandfather kind of starts this idea, or at least reinforcing this idea of kind of playing the game, but he's also a bit of a haunting reality for him as well.
So, Tim says that he wants to become Dr. Bledsoe eventually with over however long it will be.
When he's young, naive Tim.
Yeah, when he's young, naive Tim, he wants to be Dr. Bledsoe. So you could say that he takes his grandfather's advice a little more seriously by like acting the role, playing the game. But after he gets expelled and figures out that he was lied to, he's like, I want to kill Dr. Bledsoe. So could you say that he's like, that's like the shift in his character where he goes from wanting to play the role and obey his grandfather's advice to being like, somebody has to die.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that when he realizes what's going on with young Emerson, that's probably one of his very first shifts that takes place. Kate was saying chapter 10 is a really long chapter, and it is. In chapter 10, not to get ahead of where we're going, it's a very symbolic, figurative chapter. It's very allegorical as well. Chapter 10, after chapter 11, I think you're going to kind of see another shift.
Is this a paint factory?
It's a paint factory, yeah. So there's a paint factory and a hospital scene. Those two chapters, I think you kind of start to get another shift. I would say when when he wants to be like Bledsoe, he doesn't realize what all of this is. And when the vet doctor's talking to him, he feels like the vet doctor's an idiot. And what do you mean? This is nothing. I'm not a walking zombie. Driving the guy around in the car. Not many kids at the college get to do that. Now, when he doesn't figure out that he has to play the game, because, and again, a little bit of a play on words. What's Norton? He's a trustee. Emphasis on trust. He trusts him. He'll tell me what to do, and Bledsoe then yells at him for it. Don't you know how to lie to a white guy? What kind of education are you getting around here? So, even Bledsoe kind of talks to him in the sense of, you need to learn how to play with these people, how to talk to these people, how to work with these people, and that's just going way over his head. Now, when he's upset with Norton and goes to sleep dreaming of revenge and all that stuff at the end of chapter 9, this whole idea of playing the game with the whites, I would say, has kind of slid out of the forefront of his mind, because right now he's just boiling mad at Bledsoe, and I need to be able to kind of get back at him. But this idea of playing the game, overcome him with yeses, act the role, fly under the radar, agree him to death, those are things that, will continue to kind of start to become much more prevalent as the book goes on. One of the things where, it said about with chapter 9 and the shift, and you said, is that where there's a change taking place? He's still also having a pretty tough time figuring out who he is. And when he gets to New York City, he kind of sees the idea of it being like a new opportunity for him, a new beginning. When he comes out of the subway station in chapter 8, Ellison includes an allusion where it's like he came out of the mouth of the whale, like Jonah, into a whole new world. And one of the characters in chapter 9 that he comes across is Petey Wheatstraw.
What's the name? There's a woman in the subway, I was so
When you stand in the subway, you bump into each other and just nobody cares because that's how it always happens. That's what he was
We don't have those kind of subways around here.
Yeah, he was groping.
Anyone remember who Petey is?
Is he the cop?
He's pushing the shopping cart. Kiera makes the motions, you say the words. It's like you're the two craters.
Yeah. He was pushing the. Here's the devil.
Shopping cart and blueprints.
Oh yeah, going up the hill. Is that what his name was?
Petey Wheat.
Shopping cart guy.
No, Peter Wheatstraw. And he's always singing the blues. And it is a real name. It's an illusion. P.D. Wheatstraw is a blues artist like 1915, 1916. He's one of the preeminent guitar players in blues music in the early 20th century. And his stage persona is that he essentially sold his soul to the devil so that he could play the guitar well.
I did hear about that. Like, I've heard about that.
So it's kind of like a little funny that he's pushing around all these blueprints and he's a blues singer. He's the one referring to him as Daddy-O and all that kind of stuff. He is an extremely southern guy. Okay, so he has all the rural southern traits. And anytime that Tim comes, well, not anytime, but when Tim comes across him, he's trying to disassociate himself from him as much as he can because Tim wants to be new business northern guy. And it's right after he has his encounter with P.D. Wheatstraw that he stops at the breakfast counter, and the cook goes, "You look like a
Southern guy.
you want the special, which is pork chop and grits, and no, give me toast, coffee, orange juice. Make a big orange juice." So he's trying to kind of get away from being that southern guy, where now he wants to be recognized as more of a northern business kind of person. And again, this is before he realizes what the letters are. So at this point, he still fails to know who he is. So he's kind of invisible to himself. He can't play the game. He can't be submissive if he doesn't yet know kind of who he is, what is his identity. So part of the reason that he's invisible, he's failed to be recognized, but he fails to really kind of see who his own identity is, who he truly is. And until you figure that out, you're going to have a tough time, being able to get any kind of success in the world. But he wants to be like Bledsoe, because Bledsoe is supposed to be, I had my statue, but I do with it. I don't know. Here we go. Because Bledsoe is going to be the next founder, or is like kind of continuing on as being the founder, and that's what he would ultimately want to be as well. But the problem is, what does the founder do? What does Bledsoe do? They suck up and they blind other people to the truth. They play the game, but they limit
the game.
and they limit what other people do. Yeah. So Bledsoe wants to accumulate power, but he's also getting to the point where he has to keep that power for himself, and he's not going to allow other people to be able to.
Isn't Prologue supposed to be not blues?
Correct. And so,
But
and
it's
I forget what the exact description is, but it's essentially like letting people see the world. But yeah, the way that he does hold it up, it does look kind of ambiguous. That are you lowering it? The other thing with the statue, keep in mind, it's hitting streaks on it. What's covering the statue?
Bird crap.
Bird poop, which is white. So you have these white streaks that are kind of going over it. You have the whitewashing that's taking place. After Homer Barbie's speech, so Homer Barbie, the guy in chapter 5, gives the big long speech about how wonderful Bledsoe is, but then what's the physical ailment that we recognize he has?
She's blind.
So he cannot actually see. So he doesn't know what Bledsoe is doing. And then when the speech is over, the birds start singing outside of the chapel as Tim walks out. They're not bluebirds, they're not cardinals, they're not blackbirds, they're not blackbirds, they are mockingbirds. So the mockingbirds are making a big chatter after Homer Barbie gives this wonderful speech about how wonderful Bledsoe is. Now all the mockingbirds are starting to chant. So you have these kind of little things that keeps coming up over and over and over again for Tim. The dream with True Blood, and we can't cover a whole lot about it within 2 minutes. You'll kind of get a similar scene coming up later. We don't have more incest, don't worry about that. But a couple things about the dream. Within the dream, True Blood lives down in the valley. He goes to Mr. Bronack's home. Mr. Bronack lives up on the hill. He's the white philanthropist. So he has to go up into the house, goes into the front door, which would be a no-no, has his whole encounter with the white woman, runs through a, what kind of clock? Grandfather clock, big long tunnel, hits a big light, and then all of a sudden wakes up and, that whole situation is going on. But you're escaping through the grandfather clock, you go through this long tunnel, you're surrounded by light when you kind of get there. it eerily kind of foreshadows, you could say reverse foreshadows, what Tim is in the prologue when he is surrounded by light. He's trying to escape through grandfather's dreams and words and all those kinds of things. But the fact that you have Norton there, who's fascinated with the story, coming down from the north, kind of like the white philanthropist up in the big house, listening to this story, it's a little bit of a microcosm of what life would be like for True Blood, for the sharecroppers, for the people in the South, where there are certain things that the whites would allow them to do, as what happens with True Blood, because they're going to support that stereotype that these people are not, civil, barbaric, and all those things. Norton doesn't think it's a big deal that there's unmarried pregnant citizen, sharecropper. But at the same time, there's a standard that they want to uphold, but they see that as being completely different for whites, versus blacks. Norton does show up again, so keep in mind the idea of Tim's fate is part of his destiny. He goes, according to Norton, he's a big part of what's going to make Tim the way that he is. The one thing is we kind of know how Tim's ultimately going to end up when he's underground. But chapters 10 through 15, look for more shifts that kind of start to take place. Know that there's going to be a fair amount of symbolic, figurative language, extended metaphor, that kind of stuff happening in chapter 10, 11. Then we kind of start to get more of the plot unfolding, the main conflict that's going to be throughout the rest of the book, towards chapters 13, 14, even 15. So Thursday of next week, not Wednesday of next week, Thursday of next week, will be through chapter 15. All right. Tomorrow I'll pass back to your reading check quiz. Assuming everyone's here, I'll pass back to poetry quizzes. Your essays, I'm hoping to get those things done by tonight, so they should show up in Power School, poetry quiz, all that stuff. So we should be up to date.
It's a good book when the actual plot doesn't pick up until 200 pages in.
Well, I mean, the plot's picking up, but with him, the rest of the book, he's up north. So a
He's
lot
an
of the
acrobat.
little conflicts that you see in the South kind of go away, but characters that dominate throughout the rest of the book, they start to have a greater presence in the South.
True Blood.
So that's what I mean.
True Blood from that.
Find out. True Blood, Bledsoe, had a lot of bleeding when he was boxing. Bledsoe was boxing with him. He was even saying that, you don't know how.
Oh yeah, he did say that. I was thinking about that.
What's Bledsoe having on his desk?
Tiny gloves.
Shackles.
Light shackle. Shiny one. So he shackles people, keeps them from being able to see. Keeping track of those little things would be big as they continue to recur throughout.
That's how we should get scholarship. We should all just be thrown into one big ring and fight.
That's what my dad goes.
Maybe for National Merit Scholarship.
Yeah. It could be physical.
Take those top 15 and alright, duke it out. You know what? We couldn't come up any other way to separate.
I think you should have one.
Yeah. You have to fight Mrs. Palmer.
See you later.